Kalimera, Kalispera, Kalinikta. Welcome to everyone, wherever you are in the world. That was my attempt at some poor Greek. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully, Fred, you can confirm that you can see my screen?
Yeah, for sure. That's good. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Yes, indeed. So today we are going to ask the big questions about what is your damn problem? And it's a pleasure to have Fred join us. And also Jennifer is our special guest on the couch later on in the webinar. And hopefully we will be digging deep into the issues that affect everybody. So there's a couple of house rules. First of all, it's very informal and informative style that we hope to bring to this discussion. We've got some great questions already in place. And indeed, Jennifer has asked some really superb questions, which I know affect everybody. So without much ado, there is one rule here. We want people to engage with us. We'd love to have your questions. And in order to incentivize that, we will be given, well, I will be given, I haven't really confirmed with Fred yet what his donation is going to be, but we would like to choose a specific donation for the WWF based on the every question that you ask. So every question that you ask, IQ Equity, my company, would like to donate 10 euros to the Trillion Trees campaign, which there's many on here. And Fred, would you like to introduce yourself and say how much you're going to donate to the cause?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and especially a very special thanks to Jennifer. Yes, so myself, so maybe remember, because we had a wonderful webinar DAM series last year with Mark and his team, the 6 webinar series alongside the DAM. So myself, I'm the owner of Activor, a French consultancy company here. After so many times struggling on the customer vendor sides with DAM systems, so that's of course something I can share with you. I'm super happy now to share my experience and also with my team alongside DAM teams, CMS, more or less everything that links to the digital transformation. But DAM, of course, is really at the heart of DNA, and so it's always a pleasure. And it's, I would say, a couple of years ago, it was maybe much easier to make a selection. And today, with this amount of crazy number of solutions everywhere, not sure. And it doesn't mean because it looks like nice that it works. So we're happy to be there. And thanks, Mark, to organize this panel. And of course, I will do the same for the Trees campaign. And so every question you have asked. And of course, if we are not able to provide an answer, it will be much more for the campaign.
I like your style, Fred. So what are we going to pay as a donation if there is a DAM specific question, not any question, that we can't answer as DAM experts? What sort of value would you put on that?
100.
100. Okay, I'll match that. 100 euros to anyone that can ask a question that we can't answer. And for every question that you ask, we will donate 10 euros each to the Trillion Trees campaign. So there you go, Jennifer. We didn't pay you for turning up, but hopefully that contribution from the audience in terms of questions and the hard question or multiple hard questions that stump us all. So
yeah, and something maybe I can add is in behalf also of our company, because this is also a very important subject today. I will do a special gift for the organization in behalf of Activor.
Nice one. Right. So we've already got a debt, Fred, because people have been asking questions. And
yeah.
Of course, if you are watching this later on demand or on the recorded video, you can send us a question and the same rule applies. And hopefully Fred and myself will be able to answer it. So the agenda today, DAM questions, our very special guest, the WWF. And I have to say, I'm super excited about this because, you know, I've been a wrestling fan for numerous years and
I get it.
Well, they do say with therapy that laughter is a great cure. So hopefully we can have some laughs, some commiserations, understand that we all do have DAM problems because DAM is such a complex beast. And, you know, hopefully with our expertise, we can help everybody understand that. So we're also going to look at why is DAM so complex. I'm going to talk very specifically about data centricity as the future, not just of DAM, but of integrations and everything else down the line. It's time for that change. And then an open house, people can ask their questions. And as we said, we will donate to the WWF. Unfortunately, it's not the World Wrestling Federation. So, just a reminder, there are steps to DAM success. For us, it always starts at gap analysis, resource audit, your requirements, talking to your users, understanding their pain points, their needs, the systems that they're working on, the processes that they need to go through. You need to map their use case scenarios. And at the same time, you're creating governance, and governance is very much about the data model. You build the data model by understanding your users, the types of systems they're working with, and what their needs are. And then you go to a vendor. Sadly, one of the big problems that a lot of companies suffer from is they go straight to a vendor. Now, that's not always a bad thing if a vendor has a reputation, but we find there are a lot of crossovers with companies, but you know, workflows and processes and systems and the data that needs to be acquired is a specialism that really helps the vendor if you can go through these steps, and it also helps you choose the right vendor. So with these steps comes the problems, comes the reason for the DAM count. So question one, and that is 20 euros earned to the WWF, is from Carol Freed, who's the manager of digital PPD Opera at L'Oreal. And she says, I'm managing a large DAM rollout and face significant user adoption and resistance to consistent metadata and file naming protocols. Hoping to hear how others have managed these challenges. Fred, over to you.
Yeah, indeed, because it's one of our customer, and maybe I can provide some input. So it's I know this project Opera because it was starting with Opera 1, 2, and 3, and maybe now it's 4. And even 2 years ago, I remember this talk with one of the girls said, okay, we're a little bit in a trouble with the DAM. We pay a fortune, and so we're not able really to move forward. And it's clear that today, and just to give you some other experience I had from because I'm also the DAM manager for Michelin worldwide. And one other thing we can say is that regarding the adoption, it's 5% of the technology, but it's also 95% of the people. And also reason why today, as for example, on our side, okay, we have to, at one time, based on exactly what you provided just before, Mac, and thanks to remember that alongside the 6 steps of a DAM, but I will say outside of the business requirement, it's all about the change. And I would say maybe it's, especially in France today, it can be a real challenge finally to engage the people, to get some adoptions. And the reason why, so more and more, for example, we have to develop, and especially since this crazy pandemic last year, some design thinking applied to the DAM system, really because most of the time, a DAM project is not something you put on the table and say, okay, now we can start tomorrow. Or at one stage, I see with another customer we started last month, so they had some people, and they for the project, to start the project, and 1st July it will be in production, but the girl will not be there anymore. So how you can get some adoptions without a team around this project, without getting some ambassadors, as we are seeing on our side, and so that's one thing. And I do think it's very important, really. So, but in the meantime, experience-wise, I will say that most of American and in the UK, they are more used to this type of management, because it's not all about the DAM and the technology. I will say in France, it's a little bit different sometimes, or maybe often. So, yeah, for sure. In the meantime, for for L'Oréal and the Opera, it's a long story. So I don't want to stump too much of a vendor behind, but sometimes when you have to think about a system for your people, you have to think about simplicity. And the DAM system in this project is it's something very complex. It's a lot of things. It's also a matter of a support also in the meantime. And I see more and more also this alongside the adoption of a DAM system, who is doing the support, okay? And especially if you have something like a very complex systems. So yeah, for sure, it's a real challenge but first of all, one of the solutions is really to start a strategy based on this design thinking approach, really, where you can try to emphasize the project alongside some dedicated workshops. And on our side, we are doing more and more just to get some nice games with as for example, I'm using a tool which is our team is using a tool which is Klaxoon, or just like Mural or things like that. So it's we are starting with a game, in fact, really to engage with people. And it's very important also to get everybody at the beginning, from the IT to the communication to the marketing. It's also about the manager. It's not something you can do automatically, so they have to understand, and also all about the communication. As for example, by Michelin, so it's nearly every week we have some 2-man internals meeting. Everybody's around the table. Everybody is saying what the problem is, as for example this year, and so that's the path of the success. This is what I think.
Yeah, you make some good points, Fred. I would say it's very critical about who's running the project, bringing in the stakeholders and the ambassadors. But the most important thing for me in user adoption is upfront that you understand your users' needs. And by taking that sort of approach, engaging, and it could just be through a form-based system. We use it for a number of our initiatives where we actually just produce a form, we email it out, we ask the specific questions about the tools, the systems, the pain points, and then we start to profile the users. And this is a key point that a lot of systems fail for adoption because they're not profiling their users to the metadata degree. And what I mean by that is, you might be Bob or Jane that's working in a silo in the business, maybe on marketing campaigns. They need certain information, they need certain types of assets. So the closer you can profile that information to them, you can serve up the content through the DAM, through the profile. Now, there are some issues with HR around profiling, and so bringing HR into your first discovery and your first governance conversations is a really big win, because first of all, you can understand whether profiling is some form that's against HR policy, and there might be ways to mitigate around that. But the other thing is the fact that you want to serve up the best user experience through the content. And by understanding at each level where that content is and who needs to use it, helps this journey massively. But it also helps in terms of what you need in terms of file naming protocols and how you can do that. Now, there is a hidden secret in a lot of DAM companies where they can profile through the taxonomy, through the user, through the silo, through the function, through the roles, and then through the actual assets themselves. So that's a way of mitigating naming convention protocols. It's notoriously difficult to get humans to stand by that. But where you can get really big wins, and this is a KPI, a return on investment, is how you think about your agencies. And another little secret is hidden within InDesign documents and other Adobe platforms is this ability to use custom XMP. So you can, an agency or multiple agencies can use your taxonomy, provided you've done the work up front for that and your control vocabularies. They can be embedded into the documents. And when they're ingested into the DAM system, it actually maps that metadata to the system. So it cuts out a lot of this grunt work of humans. It's a strategic play, and it's part of the conversations that you should have at the governance level. The other parts about user adoption are how you curate the experience and get people's buy-in. Of course, everybody expects a Google experience, and unless you do the taxonomy, the control vocabularies, and the metadata profile to the users and your partners, then this is a reason that DAMs fail.
Yeah, I think you are highlighting a good point regarding the XMP or things. This is also something we are doing, even if it's the only issue it's more about the language support, because sometimes you have to provide different translations, etc. But it's these capabilities to map the custom fields with custom metadata of a system is a nice way for sure. And for the naming protocols, I would say I see two different also type of customers. For example, for retailers, it's not a big deal because of course most of the time you have a PIM attached to the DAM, and if you want to get some smart automation rule sets, things like that, you have to get some as for example with Michelin, we have the naming convention is more or less most of the tires of the images, the name is around 100 characters. So because we have global ID, EN code, product name, dimension, etc. And but it's of course that's something you have to explain to the people. It's not always obvious because most of the time it's manual naming conventions, so you can imagine the nightmare sometimes. But by the way, it's really for this type of market, that's something where we see and a user can adopt the system. For the others, it's more difficult, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and AI plays a part there, color matching, keywords, the taxonomy itself, how well that's constructed. These can all sort of alleviate some of the file naming protocols. So there's two questions for you here, Fred. So Fabrizio's on a roll. He's asking, is Sprinkler connected to the DAM at L'Oreal? I don't know if you know or you can answer that one. And he's also asking about the challenge to find the boundaries of DAM. How would you approach this? Sorry, I'll ask that question later. There's one from Tim Middleton who says, missed the name of the tool Fred just mentions he uses for building adoption.
It's Klaxoon.
Klaxoon.
Yeah, Klaxoon. It's super well known. It's a really you can really try 1 month subscription. It's something you can manage. It works with Zoom, as for example, so you can manage virtual rooms. So sometimes we have some dedicated people around some communication marketing. We have IT. Everybody has something to do. You have some dashboard where you can put some annotation, some tips on the board, etc. So it's super easy to use. It's also integrated in Teams now. So because of course Teams is the best tool ever. I don't like to say that, but this is something we have to say. So that's a good tool. But you have also some others, just like Mural, which is also coming. I see a couple of it's more on your side in the UK. There are a lot of customers are using Mural. And the other question was,
is Sprinkler connected to the DAM at L'Oreal?
To be honest, I don't know for L'Oreal, but what I can say, it's the case for Michelin. Yeah, Sprinkler is a very nice tool, and I would say sometimes maybe some DAM vendors can be inspired by what Sprinkler is doing, because it's super well done. I would say I see more people using HotSuite today, but for L'Oreal, I do not know exactly which one they are using, because a couple of things have changed. And
we've had the answer. Yes, L'Oreal does use Sprinkler. Thank you, GF Gypsy.
Okay.
So, so there's a couple of points here, Fred, just on the financial implications here. I think you should pay extra for Tim's question because he couldn't understand your French. And, I think you should pay 100 for the Sprinkler question. But thanks for the answer. We will make a donation there. Right. Sure. Here we go. This is like being in the casino. Okay. Right. DAM therapy question number 2 from Tim Middleton. Oh, he's on a roll. Multimedia producer who's actually here. Thanks, Tim, for joining. My issue, DAM providers appear to be moving more and more to the cloud as SaaS offerings. How are people with large video files handling this? Are there still holdout companies dedicated to providing DAM solutions for on-prem? Are people coming up with workarounds, or are people making cloud work with major bandwidth investments? What do you say, Fred?
Oh, that's exactly what I've got today as a challenge today, because it's I would say 85% of our, if I took some numbers from Gartner, it's all cloud solutions. But I see, as for example, with one of our customers in the US, we are managing 1,000 of files per day, and they don't have the time to upload the assets, even if with some fiber. So whatever the investment today, you have to provide more and more images for video capabilities. As for example, it's now 4K is there, so it's a massive amount of information. So to be honest, it's not something I do not see, and this is one of the conclusions we had remarked in December when we are talking about the future of DAM 2021. Okay, so maybe for some brands, they have some a small library of content, why not? But for a couple of them, we have to find a way between on-prem and cloud, or something in between. So of course, we have some technologies today. We have some vendors, because maybe they have the experience, or they spend some time on the customer side, which is definitely a good way. They are trying to develop some drive capabilities, just like the box things. But whatever, as for example, I'm working close to print management and etc. And we have every time InDesign package, as for example, is now minimum, it's 6-10 gig. So it's just a nightmare to upload back and forth, etc. Of course, we have, for InDesign, we have some, I'm working with 2 customers, and for example, I see on the Invalid, or I have to talk about him, but CIHub is providing a nice plugins to drive the content, etc. So we can do a couple of things, but in the meantime, when you have very large agencies with tons of materials to update, it's not obvious. I have got another use case. They are working with, it's a retailer in Belgium. They have more than 100 terabytes, and they want to change 30% of almost everything. There are hundreds of people. I say, but it's not something we can do, to be honest. So how we can work? And definitely something we have to think about is, I do not see today one solution that can provide the solution, but we have to find a way regarding the designers, the creative operation team, to find a way to change the way we're working, in fact. And but it's not obvious, because, as for example, maybe you remember this full price. I spent years working with full price on Zynet. It was they were very good for file server management with terabytes of things. I was myself at top of agency with 20 terabytes. I'm still in contact with some large agencies today. They have 40 terabytes. So everybody is saying that, okay, full price has been acquired by Northplane and then Aclat, and now it's more or less dead. So, but it's dead. But in the meantime, a couple of agencies are asking us how I can move forward, because I tried a couple of cloud solutions, but sometimes the engine is not so good because I've got very large files. It takes a lot of time, etc. The performance is not there. So we are still in a way to find a solution to a mix between on-prem, cloud, etc. So it's to be honest, I don't have the solution now from the performance standpoint and something smart on the DAM vendor side.
Yeah, you raised some really good points. I think, Tim, all of these are embodied in your question. So for me, it goes back to your requirements and your use case scenarios, understanding your users and what the actual need is for, these large files. What is their destination point? And this is where I see a key differential between media asset management companies and digital asset management companies. specifically our focus and my focus with the 10 core characteristics and the accreditation process for DAM vendors is very DAM centric. When we tried to reach out into the media asset side of things, we found them lacking in the sort of metadata aspects that you would need for a full enterprise rollout. Of course, if you do the analysis at the beginning and you understand the channels that they need to go in, we find that we're seeing much more hybrid on-prem with cloud for the distribution points. The TV stuff is a whole different ball game anyhow, and the rights and the sort of the rights management within that piece is very heavy in terms of what you would expect from video as opposed to other forms of content. And the other point here is that you see the tools for file acceleration out of the box now for DAM, which has taken quite a time to get over. The way vendors use CDNs for video is something you need to look into. I mean, it is a very specific part of the mix, and it really depends on your use case. And of course, it's always an investment in bandwidth for most companies. It's a struggle that we all have. Yeah. Great question. Good earned money. Let's see what we've got from the audience. So we have J-League. What is the most important integration to an enterprise DAM that every using company should consider completing? So for you, Fred, what's the most important integration to an enterprise DAM that every company should be using or consider completing?
I will think it depends finally of your vertical market, because definitely today, one important thing for an enterprise DAM is to provide an API that can really more or less connect everything with everything. I will say, as for example, 80% of my customers today are using Salesforce. So of course, the question is always, is my DAS system has my DAS system some connector with Salesforce or some CMS, etc., etc. But in the meantime, I see that most of the time, even if you have a connector, this connector most of the time has been developed by some consultancy company or like this, or it's based on a use case, and of course your customer has a different use case. So reason why I think the most important thing is really and that's not something that people they are not paying enough attention to when they are selecting the DAM. It's all about the APIs and what type of APIs. As for example, for when you have a DAM and PIM system, not so much DAM system can push information. So I have to ask to the PIM system to request informations. That's one thing. The other things we see more and more to facilitate the integration in the enterprise ecosystem is to provide something vendors are calling content picker. It looks like as a mini DAM based on the API that you can easily integrate in your CMS or whatever. But in the meantime, it's vendors, they are not thinking about all their finally every time how people are working. So I see every time some missing very important features. And so at the end of the day, it's we have to do some custom dev. And for the PIMAS, for example, it's always custom, and it can be a huge work because PIM has its own data model. Of course, you are not duplicating the data model of a PIM inside the DAM, so it's a lot of complexity. And even if we say, okay, API can do everything, yes, but when you have two systems that have to talk all together, it's not so obvious. And so we are facing a lot of their of pain points alongside. So I would say regarding the vertical market, it depends, in fact, but I think it's first API wise, and really to spend the time to look at the API and to stump the APIs. Not something so many people are looking first, because the first thing is always, okay, it looks like it's nice, it's performance, etc. But the API, I think this is the key for the integration, by the way.
Yeah, so there's a lot of buzzwords around first, API first, mobile first, etc., etc. For me, very much now, the most important integration is where your data model sits. All this hard work that you have to do at the start of your damn journey for taxonomy, control vocabularies, and metadata standards has massive value across an enterprise. And the shift has to come in data centricity. Data first. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of fine tuning. It's a constant garden that you have to nurture. But the benefits of, and the vendors won't like this, but I'm advising all clients nowadays to have this data centric approach. Don't have your data locked in any platforms anymore. Of course, the API can distribute and push and pull, and we're seeing master data come into the mix a bit more, but you know, master data is predominantly currently on sort of RDMS systems, systems of record, and systems of record aren't really good for the touchy-feely stuff. But of course, in the touchy-feely stuff, there's rich data that can be used across the enterprise. So my advice is the integration is find your taxonomy vocabulary tool, and as we see more and more APIs, of course, API open vendors do really well, but there is some clunkiness and some chunkiness in APIs. And this is why we're seeing graph databases come more to the fore, especially in master data worlds. So we go from taxonomies through to, you know, markup at metadata level and different types of markup, through to the ontologies that are sitting in the enterprises. So these ontologies can talk to each other. The nomenclature in your taxonomy is matching the enterprise initiatives, and it's not buried in a tool that then has to say, okay, well, you need workflow. I mean, workflow is a massive integration. How well vendors do workflow, how well they're actually integrated into each other. And then there comes a new thing. There's, you know, there's this, there's that. And what's happening with the sort of the scope and reach of DAM can also cause a problem. And it causes a massive problem when you fall out with your vendor and you want, or the vendor isn't iterating enough, or it's gone backwards, it's not forward thinking. You want that data model external from a DAM system, but obviously massive part of the DAM system. So how are you looking at APIs and graphs to do that? Yeah, a data-centric approach. Great question, Jay. That's another 10 euros from me and 10 euros from Fred.
Yeah.
So let's move on. I will get to you, Fabrizio. Just a reminder to anyone that's turned up late, we are paying 10 euros for any question from the audience and any questions that's in this damn couch, damn problem webinar. And we have chosen to donate this money to 1 trillion trees for the WWF. So great cause. Keep asking your questions and we'll keep emptying Fred's pockets. Right, question number 3. This is from Abhilash Nair of ICP. I think there is a bit more performance issues when many users try to log into a DAM platform. Fred.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's also something that has to be part to when you have to make a selection of a DAM. And as I said, most of the time, do not trust a PowerPoint or provide some. This is something I do every time, to provide a selection of assets and not to get a demo based on some small JPEG, things like that. But it's much more than that. So it's not every time very obvious to measure and to test, or of course you can do some proof of concept, but something I can see, and especially for new DAM vendors, of course you don't have any dedicated server, and most of the time you don't have some cluster environment with some dedicated conversion servers. And so one of the biggest things you have to challenge is what's happening, and especially with some, because now with the DAM headless, so you have the back, you have a front, and what's happening when I've got 1,000 people uploading more or less in the same time in the system. You can be very surprised, because I would say that 50% of DAM system, they are failing because this is not something where some use case that some people are really investing. I'm really talking for the new DAM vendors. I would say for the old guys of this world, that's something they are used to because they're starting from on-prem with a large amount of content to ingest, etc. But it's for a couple of them, I was very disappointed. It's also related to, as for example, a question to from Roland regarding the fact that why you need to separate DAM and PIM. Okay, so and especially as for example, I see in France, most of the time people they want to get everything for nothing. So okay, you can get some open source things, etc. Maybe you know PIMcore. PIMcore is a nice tool. I was using PIMcore since 2005, and PIMcore say we are also a DAM system. But my gosh, have you ever tried to use PIMcore as a DAM system? First of all, it's just something very ugly, so it's just a challenge to do something. But by the way, this is not the purpose of a PIM system. A PIM is dedicated to a product, a DAM to the assets. And most PIM system I know, they are very bad performance-wise to manage the assets, okay? And so reason why it's definitely most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, it's one DAM and one PIM. And when a PIM vendor said, okay, we are a DAM system, I say, oh my gosh, every time I tried, I will not give a list of all the PIM vendors, but most of the usual guys, you know, it was failing. So, but this performance issues regarding to our main question is really important today. And it's not so obvious to, especially during some demo during the RFP to check that. And of course, if you're asking the questions, the vendor will say, of course, it works because and sometimes they say because we are in the cloud, which is nothing links to the fact that you are in the cloud or on-prem. So very interesting question.
Yeah, great question, Roland. And I think you've answered the original question, Fred. I would just add the point to Roland and into Jay's secondary question about thinking about the data model. Of course, these platforms have to ingest that model, but what I'm suggesting is they are not the version of the truth for the data model itself. The assets are the version of the truth. The product data and how that's handled are the version of the truth. But the point is you have this ring-fenced relational database, for want of a better word, or graph databases, or a multitude of different databases, but they're codified for the approach that you would take for the metadata engine that is DAM, specifically around the touchy-feely elements of content. And I think this is something that we don't take into account enough in the DAM industry itself. There is an interaction between content and the human brain, whether it's dopamine or serotonin or whatever. There is a physical, emotional, and it can be a positive or a negative emotion around certain types of content. That adds value across an organization. And it also brings into, I know it's a question of Jennifer later about KPIs and return on investment. That's a big one. What you're measuring and how you're measuring it, and how you have the premise to measure it in different systems without stretching a DAM to do everything or one analytics tool or whatever. The data model feeds these different platforms. Jay, I hope I've answered that question for you. And that's another 10 from me and another 10 for Roland. That's going to 1 trillion trees. Let's take the next question. The DAM couch. So this is from Craig Stevens, a DAM professional with global experience, and he certainly has. One question I've been wrestling with lately is companies that are selecting systems before addressing their use cases and are then hiring implementers or DAM product owners. I've interviewed for such roles. How should I be addressing the fact that they've got these things wrong the wrong way around? Great question, Fred.
Yeah, it's something I see also more and more, and especially today I'm working for a large hospitality company, and it's not so far like this. Or yeah, for sure, it's something I can see as, for example, also we have an RFP for vendors and we see more and more RFP for the integrators. And so sometimes we have some confusion because, of course, we are searching people able to integrate. We are searching people that can be as a product owner. So it's a little bit a mess, to be honest. And so, and I know Greg. I know Greg. So it's I know what you mean. So I think it's always but it's not obvious because we can provide the advices to say, okay, you have to do like this, etc., etc. It's also maybe one of the reason it's today we have a very crazy market. It's as Scott from MarkTech is saying, it's you have so many things everywhere, and so at one time you have some confusion regarding the facts between products, implementations, and the role of the people. I will say, by the way, on the English and the American side, it's you have some very good guys, which is not really the same on as, for example, on the French side. And so, but it's difficult to explain to the people that the right path they have to take, for sure. It just at one time, sometime it just but we can get exactly also the same remark on the damn vendor side also, because sometimes they are not playing also the role at that stage. I've got some example also when they want to go in direct. You are starting as a product owner, but you are not anymore in the loop. So I think we have to be clear with the customer. We have to provide a clear vision and strategy and how it should work if you want to be successful.
Yeah, very true. There are a lot of points in between that. I mean, Craig has actually said that he's turned down work on that basis, and I don't blame him. I mean, who wants to wade through treacle if the choice has been the wrong choice? You know, sometimes it's the right choice for one of the silos, but it doesn't work for the rest of the organization. Again, it goes back to the steps to success: gap analysis, resource audit, all the things I'm banging on about. And, you know, unless they're paying you a lot of money to take that stress level, and we are on the damn couch and it is a therapy session, then you're going to be in therapy for a number of years, and you've got to make the call whether that's worth the approach. Of course, you know, it's an odd one. It's partly the vendor's fault, and it's partly the client's fault, and it's partly the consultant's fault. You know, this rush to market without doing the data model and without doing the discovery and the research add to the pain point complexity at the end of the loop. I mean, just looking at, I'm going to show some stuff that we've been working on in terms of requirements and the level of complexity just in requirements and how we map that to vendors. You know, if you've got that sort of data to hand, which most companies don't have, unfortunately, that's one of my damn problems, Fred, is how you get enough people to understand there are answers out there, but this is a process you should be guided through, and that's going to help you make everybody's life much easier by choosing the best fit for the company, for the strategy, for the requirements and the use cases.
Yeah. In the meantime, I think customers are always kind of also to get some. I see that every time, and especially as, for example, for the governance, which is so important. They are just yesterday, I was with a retail customer in France and said, okay, can you tell me how much people they have, how they organize? Do I need a data manager? How many librarians I need, etc. Okay, how many assets they have? So something we are trying to cook, and also especially based on your material, Mark, and which is very useful, is really to highlight some different use cases, and then try to explain to the customer, okay, this is the right way to follow with these different roles, etc. And at one time, customer experience based, they can understand the organization that they have to put in place.
So a sub question to that, I guess, I'm trying to understand it fully, is from Fabrizio. The challenge I see is to define the boundaries of the dam first. How would you approach this? This is the main difficulty when comparing vendors. So maybe a bit more clarity on this question, Fabrizio. Happy to pay another €10. And Fred, I'm sure you'll agree with that, for the trillion trees that we're doing for these
sure.
types of questions. The challenge I see is to define the boundaries of DAM first. How would you approach this? This is the main.
For me, it's I will say I've got three types of boundaries, and finally, whatever it's a retailer, agency, etc. One thing is sure today, it's all about the user experience, because it's difficult to say to sell a spreadsheet to a customer in 2021. And at that stage, we have some old DAM system that, to be honest, I cannot sell anymore. It's just too crap, and so on based on old framework. But the main point for me is the performance. As we said, it's definitely something, because as soon as you have a large organization, the main boundary is the performance, and the second one is the ecosystem. Something also we were talking about. So, and maybe on the third, I will not put the user experience as number one, because I see so many systems which looks like super nice, and at the end of the day, you're uploading just a couple of large sheets, and it's not capable to process the files or to extract the metadata, etc., etc. So performance and ecosystem for me.
Yeah, and for me, you know, going to accredited vendors, understanding whether you need an enterprise system, a silo or a multi-silo system, what your budget is. You know, these are all boundaries in terms of vendors that don't pass the 10 core characteristics, for instance, are a boundary. But, you know, they might be getting traction within a silo. It's complicated. And it's complex, and you know, this is why we have these type of questions. I'm conscious that our guest is on the line, and I did say half an hour, and it's now 50 minutes. So I'm going to scroll straight to, oh, there we go. Jennifer Anna. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Mark and Frederick. Thank you so much for having me. I think I missed the beginning of the intro, but I'm very happy to be here, and I really appreciate the conversation that you both are having with this group. It's really great to have your experience answer these questions in such a direct way. And thank you for the donations to WWF. It's appreciated.
Yeah, keep them coming, audience, because we're happy to donate to 1 trillion trees. I think it's a great opportunity. There is a link here. You might not want to donate personally to trees. Fred and I went backwards and forwards in about 2 minutes before we started this specific webinar. But Jennifer, welcome to the DAM therapy couch.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you.
And being our live guest, and with such great questions as well. So let's start with the first one. Why haven't we been able to progress between the long-standing issues, adoption, senior management support, ROI, and big clunky platforms? So do you want to give a bit of context around that question?
Yeah.
Well, sort of going to the whole therapy couch, I mean, these questions reflect, I would say adoption, senior management support, and ROI continue to be a challenge at WWF. Now, with adoption, we're very fortunate in that the system is used by the entire network, and that the assets are it is the central tool for assets for our network. Where we're struggling is feeding the library to sort of meet that demand, but also kind of getting senior management to understand that this is something that's not just a project, but a program, that it requires resources and support. And of course, our challenge has been that the ROI is tough. And I think in hindsight is 2020, I do regret that we did not insist upon integrating the DAM with certain channels like social media and web to have more concrete metrics.
Yeah.
So in terms of adoption, I know Carol asked a question earlier, and I really appreciated your response. Like, we have a community of people who want to help build the library, but their resources are limited. And so where we're kind of hitting a wall, so the people are willing to help, but they don't have the time or the resources or the technical experience.
Yeah.
So right now, where the next big hurdle, I think, for us is senior management. And I think I have a few thoughts about it. I think we're going to think about doing a relaunch in the next 2 years in terms of sort of generating enthusiasm again for the platform. But those are sort of some of the questions that come up. And then I think these are questions that I'm always talking to my colleagues about again and again and again. And sometimes when you go to conferences, everyone's sort of asking these questions and nobody seems to have any answers. And so, so yeah, that was a little bit verbose, but does that provide some additional context?
It certainly does. So there's some big issues here. So a question I have for you is, are you using agencies in a lot of the mix for the actual content creation, or is it internal?
Our content creation is very interesting and it's kind of complicated. So the answer is it comes from everywhere. It comes from external agencies. It comes from external filmmakers and photographers. It comes from internal producers. But then the kind of wild card for us is because we are a science-based organization. We do work out in the field. So our scientists and program staff take a lot of imagery and video. And why we would want that is because they go to locations that are very difficult to access. So that has been a big hurdle and one that I have been a little bit scared of. So the answer is that those are sort of the 4 main buckets of where our content's coming from.
Yeah, so this question of resourcing and return on investment and KPIs and different KPIs definitely play into the mix. But you know what? The big money, the real savings are sitting in the relationships with your partners, specifically agencies, because you know this whole process of creation, the ideation of an idea all the way through to the creative. And then you mentioned the point about channels and how you integrate with them. Well, that's the curation part of that. And that curation is where you can get some really sound analytics and metrics on use and reuse. And to your point about being a scientific organization, this would be a helpful one. From been working in the sort of the pharma side of things. They have a process called FAIR: findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And they have got some really good resource metrics around that and pointing to the reuse of content and the recreation of content that's already in the mix. Factors into, you know, in some companies, it's millions of dollars that are sitting there, and all it is a mindset, a strategic shift in how you operate. And maybe we'll get into that a bit later. Fred, what have you got to offer?
Yeah, for sure. That's a couple of good points that that we are highlighting there. It's in the meantime, sometimes it's okay. It's every time all about the processes inside the organization. A couple of things we already said, but at one time, I like the 2 points you are highlighting from the creative operations and the pharma. And as for example, I do a lot of packaging on my side, but and packaging is also about processes. Yeah. But really, do you find today in the market a solution that can do everything from that? Not really. And I'm not surprised that even a company like L'Oréal, they spend millions in solutions. And at the end of the day, when we are talking all together about a project, I received a WeTransfer link, a box things, okay? So why? Just to get an approval of assets, okay? And so I think it's really important for the vendors really to, I shared always the same story, but I'm sorry for that, but in 1997, Steve Jobs was back by Apple and had a wonderful conference where we're saying, in fact, you don't have to build a system with your engineers and try to fix and try to sell it. You have to sit down with the customers and then back to your engineers and, okay, this is what we have to do. But 25 years later, nothing has really changed, in fact. And I see for the creative operation teams, you are a designer, how you want to get adoption sometimes where you don't have the right features. So, and I think it's very important to be, sometimes people say, okay, you don't have to work with vendors because it's not good. At one time, we need to provide also a solution. That's the reason why sometimes I like also working with vendors. And that's, for example, that's more than 1 year. It's not really a damn vendor, but I spend a lot of time with CIO because the CEO was very smart and clever and said, okay, Fred, what matters for the end user, for the creative operation teams to put inside your InDesign, so to make everything, to make the dam great again, I would say. You remember who was saying that? So, and finally, we tried in about 1 year to provide solutions for the customers. On the pharma and packaging side, it's more complex because sometimes you have some more dam production things on the packaging, which are very ugly, and for most of the other dam, packaging is a very complex thing because you have spot color, vanish, transparencies. Try to get a preview of this type of files inside the dam. It just doesn't work. So reason why sometimes we are talking about adoption, you need to get also some piece of very smart technology. On the other end, as you are highlighting about the workflows, I will say sometimes the customer is a little bit guilty because I see so many guys, I'm working workflows since the last decade, and workflow doesn't mean that you have a selection of assets and you are starting a task management and say, okay, I want to share and say yes or no. It's not really that. A real business process mapping, you have different milestones with different stakeholders, with different calls, etc. So nothing really you can see today. So that's one bad point from the damn vendors. On the other side, sometimes customers think they can solve everything inside the organization with workflows. And they are building, my gosh, some crazy workflows. You need something like 4 screens to get the complete view of it. Just like as one of my good friend, Chris Eric, I saw he was there at the beginning. Maybe he's not anymore there, but he made a fantastic presentation from a Lego standpoint. And sometimes you don't have to build a complex Lego because your people, how you can get adoptions when guys, they have to get some very complex way to approve the assets. So it's a mix of things finally on the customer side, on the vendor side, and finally to engage more the people and to get a better adoption.
Yeah, agree. I think the toughest question here, Jennifer, really is senior management support, because if you get it and you get the champions, then they drive it. Everybody's on board. They've got a plan. They've got a vision. But the trouble is a lot of senior management don't understand DAM, and they really don't understand metadata. And it's really difficult to explain metadata and the powers of metadata. However, what we're now seeing is the CIO is on the upper management. There's a CDO on the upper management. There's CMO on the upper management, and they're starting to understand the data side of things. They're being conditioned to understand it's data first. And what I talked about data centricity at the beginning of this webinar factors into that. If they're looking at master data, again, DAM plays a big part in that. The other thing is, have you done the sort of the gap analysis and the resources for your users? Are you a silo in terms of DAM within the organization? And does the management understand that literally everybody, whichever part of an organization, of the enterprise they're in, touch content in one form or another?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a really good point. And I think a few things. Like, I think part of us our very small team has kind of Well, it's just interesting because like now we have a new stakeholder and like immediately things are changing for the dam. So it's interesting like how new people or a new stakeholder can really help put the dam forward. You know, I think for us, like I think in terms, I wonder that as content needs to be accelerated in terms of distribution, that WWF will eventually hit a wall and not having more streamlined workflow processes. And for better or worse, will potentially be forced to have to face that they're going to have to automate better than they're doing now. So that's kind of been my one thought. But I think, Mark, you had said this earlier about like one of the values of integration is the data integration. And that was very exciting to hear if I heard it correctly, because, you know, WWF is a place that produces a lot of high quality data. And I think there's definitely an opportunity lost there. And I think that's where you're going to really see, I think, a lot of inefficiencies for us that might have value to stakeholders.
Yeah, well, target the master data teams, whether there's a CIO and a CDO, get them around the table. You know, it might be a number of meetings. They want to see the metrics, they want to see the KPIs, but the bigger picture is, you know, the data model has value across the organization. So it shouldn't just be locked into a platform. That's my argument about data centricity.
Agreed.
Yeah, great question. So has that made you feel a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more positive? Is the couch working? Are we good therapists, or are we adding to your woes?
At the end of the therapy, maybe.
I think you guys are great therapists. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Right, let's go to your next brilliant question. So, moving into a new dam, would love to hear experience and lessons learned from moving one dam to a new platform.
Yeah, and Mark, before I just wanted to add something to this. I'm sure it's nothing that you don't, and Frederick, you don't know, but like, you know, when you start thinking about that process, like in terms of therapy, I think you bring so much of your baggage from the old platform. So you're thinking so much about what you don't want or what you want to be different based on your relationship with that or the lack of relationship with your vendor. So yeah, I would love to hear sort of that piece of it as well, if possible. But just to know what the lessons learned have been would be really incredible.
Fred.
Yeah, I will say from the vendor side, something has really changed, I would say, since the last decade is sometimes this is we're also in sometimes in love with the customers, because when I was a customer in the early 2000, to be honest, I've got some people, they had the experience, etc. And so it was very great. We were more working as a partner than today. Today you have this type of things of acceleration. You have to do everything super fast, etc. Blah 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 blah. And so I see some. I've got sometimes something I learned from an American colleague before, who was saying me that you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, and in fact, I met some people, they have no experience at all of everything. They were doing something else before. And as soon as we are trying to talk about finally how it should fit on the customer side, it's just, we are not selling a bugs or software. We are not finally installing some basic software. So, and regarding the fact to move from one dam to a new platform, you need the experience at that stage. I see, because I would say that 30% of our projects is on migration, and so and sometimes it's always a challenge, because I see with Michelin 2 years ago we have to pay to get the assets, something I don't really understand, to be honest, because this is the assets of a customer. But okay, you can get some services, but not so much. It's and the reason why also maybe for moving from one dam to the other, one thing you were saying at the beginning, Mark, was using the XMP. This is really also one of the reasons I try to advise to people using IPTC and etc. and custom fields, because you don't have the migration is a little bit easier and faster, because you just have to put your assets from one system to the other, download, upload, and more or less it's done. So it's you have some strategy at that stage to ready to move from one system to other, but it's with the vendors, it's always some commercial things, and it's a little bit tricky to, or you have to pay a fortune to do some things that so it can be really a pain point at that stage.
Yeah, and there's numerous reasons why you would move to a new DAM system in the first place. You know, the relationship with the vendor, your third-party providers, what's their knowledge. I go back to the 6 steps. If you're thinking of moving to a new DAM, you know, getting the user buy-in, profiling the users, getting as many people in the organization that touch content and their stress points around content are great factors in that. But they say if you've got a hammer, everything's a nail. But to be honest, data is the key feature here. And the ability to have a data model, the taxonomy laid out, how you want it through the research that you've done and the discovery and the knowledge that you have of your users, the control vocabularies within the organization, especially in an organization like yours, Jennifer, is critical. The fact that you can augment that data now with real, you know, open source, linked open data ontologies, putting graphs on top of it, and then taking that model and saying, okay, we're going to go through this process of an RFP for a vendor. We pretty much know that a lot of the information's codified, you know, budgets according to this, perception of the vendor, your relationships with them, how vendors approach you, whether they really give a shit about your organization is a very key point as well. And some really do, and some just don't. But my point is this: when you've got your data model right, you can quickly have a relationship with a vendor that takes you from a rapid prototype through to a proof of concept to a rollout. And if you work with the vendor along those lines, and I do think vendors should be paid for this, you know, you're dancing before you kiss and you get married. And that approach at the data model level, the dating model level, really is going to help you, because you're going to know at that point with the real data what the vendor can actually do and what the vendor can't do. Because they, you know, we all say, yes, we can do this. Yes, we can do this. Oh, it's customization, or it's configuration, or it's advanced configuration. I can't really put a timeline on it. Our roadmap is this, a roadmap is that. But with a data model in relational databases where the data is linked to each other, and this is a failure in DAMs. You know, a lot of the time a DAM is a hierarchical classification tree. They don't really get the linked information right. So they're not data centric. They are in terms of what the system can do for, you know, DAMs are very good at stamping data into assets. DAMs are very good, those that are accredited, about embedding that data on its journey through the integration points. For me, that's a key factor. That's my hammer. Data centricity externally from these platforms, and use that to do your workflow proof of concepts, independent of what the vendors bring to it. And it may be that, you know, you have a mix and match situation, but the data can do that. It has its purpose in the system, however that's acquired and whatever that does. And it might be an API and a two-way, you know, push-pull, chunky monkey going on. But the impact of being able to say, this is our data model, show me you can do this, this is what we want, really, really helps everybody.
Yeah, it's right. And I think this is your the idea you are sharing with us, Mark, alongside this data model and the new approach regarding the management of metadata. And something I see also regarding this migration is sometimes with customers we are more using some ETL softwares, finally, where we can easily finally export, import, aggregate some information from different systems, etc. So nothing that really I can see, or maybe with some of them, but Most DAM vendors, they are not providing such facilities. And I think I do believe also that for, especially regarding this management of content for a brand, a vendor should facilitate this export. Okay, maybe sometimes you have to change the DAM system for multiple reasons, but you don't have to close the system at that stage, and without to find some tips and tricks or and sometimes also sometimes which is not obvious. I can see, especially here on the French side, it's so many people have so many DAM systems. So sometimes you don't have to move from one to the other, but you have to migrate a couple of them to one to the other. So I can tell you the nightmare is at the top.
There you go. So Craig, that's a great answer to Jennifer's question about the migration side of it. It's one of the big problems. Again, if the data model's there and it's intact and it's functioning and everyone's signed off on the nomenclature, migration mapping is so much easier. And we find that, you know, it's an afterthought with the governance side of it. Migration falls into governance. So Craig, you need to make a donation to the WWF as well.
That was a great answer, and some very interesting points about the vendors sort of getting paid for that process that might help make things a little bit more honest. Agreed.
Yeah, and again, you know if you're going to dance or married, and you're learning that, and the cross learning that both organizations, the vendor and the client, find in that process can be invaluable. You know, a lot of the time, this is a point I want to make actually, which is really important. And it's something that I'm trying to put into the metrics about the vendor analysis itself, is the workflow subject matter expertise. Because, you know, if a company has a great DAM, but they don't understand the specifics in the science world, for instance, you know, there's a lot more complexity, regulated industries. If you don't know the specifics of that workflow, then you're constantly on the back foot. You're never going to be able to be as good as a vendor that specializes in that area. And that's a critical point, because you have to factor that into the strategy right from the beginning. And the subject matter expertise of workflows is a key differentiator for actual vendor choice.
That's interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you both.
Yeah, and it's a new learning for me, really, because it really does play, especially in the science world. And again, you know, findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, compliance, legal, you know, they are factors. They should also be in this equation. You know, legal departments, how many times are they reviewing content? What metadata needs to be assigned to that review process? What are the reference materials that you have to pull into that, and everything beyond that? And then once you look in the ontology worlds, you can go all the way down to saying, okay, we're interested in your use case, Jennifer. We're interested in saving a particular animal, you know, tigers or pandas. I mean, you do a lot more than that. I was absolutely blown away once I realized you weren't a wrestling organization. So there you go. I'm making you laugh. The therapy's working. It's definitely. But my point is this. You know, we're now looking at things like culture, like climate, like the nutrients that are involved in the jungles and the whole sort of ecosystem of an environment, which is also then factored into an ecosystem of end-to-end content and what that does. And again, I don't think we found a verbiage to describe this. It's more a sense, but it comes together with the data model itself. I don't know if I explained that properly.
Yeah, beautifully said. No, it does make a lot of sense. We have not gotten to the open source ontologies, but it's definitely a dream of mine. So thank you.
Yeah, and again, this is great, because this is what DAMs can do. If you tell a DAM system, we want to have a field, and that field is called chemical composition, right? And that asset on its journey at some stage might be populated with that specific piece of information. Well, that one piece of metadata in an ontology world opens up a whole plethora of information. And if you can visualize it, if you can suck that information in, whether it's a DAM or enterprise content management, or looking at documentations and filtering down through text analysis, which DAMs are very good at, and now AI plays a part in that, it really does move from content to knowledge, right? And this is why DAM's so important. It's the content with metadata is context, not just for humans, but for machines. And the machines are really good at pulling in the ontologies when they know that the nomenclatures work. So this thing we're calling a chemical compound might have a metadata standard called CAS ID. And if that CAS ID is embedded in the asset, when that asset goes on its journey, it sucks in all this other linked information. This is the premise of linked open data and ontologies and knowledge graphs. And it's fascinating. But again, my hammer comes out. It's the data model, stupid. And that's where you get it. Well, how do you build that data model? And we used to say, well, it's librarians. Well, it's not librarians. It's not just librarians. It's information architects. It's thinkers and doers within the organization, and educating them about this power of meta or parametadata. Metadata about metadata in a linked open world is just, well, it's why I do this stuff. I love it.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you so much.
No problem. So, Jennifer, Anna, a question again. So do you want to give some context around this?
So we've it's interesting because we are a nonprofit organization, but you know, we do a great deal of fundraising, and we are a charity that gives to other smaller conservation organizations. So I have tried to, the ROI has been really tough. Like we've, without really having, again, the system marry with external channels to sort of show direct metrics in terms of how much the system, quote unquote, is making, has really fallen on deaf ears. And I don't know if it's just something that we kind of give up on, or I mean, we always have to show our impact, but like we're definitely not getting where we're supposed to be. We might try to like kind of re-angle our perspective when we're talking to stakeholders and talk about storytelling, the importance of telling the story of conservation, which is, you know, what our dam does in part, things like that. That maybe might be a better approach. But again, would love to know, do we give up on it? What are people's experiences? What other ideas for trying to get there with ROI?
Fred.
That's a very good question, because and especially today, I will say most of the time, you don't have to pay 1 million to get your dam system. And today, when we're starting a dam project via these KPIs, which are something more than KPIs. This is more something I'm talking with customer with BI, because the dam system supports some custom, some standard metadata, but also some custom. And I see with the customers, and I see that every day, and I would say maybe 80% of dam system today, they are just providing some activity report. So, okay, it's nice to see that how much people downloaded some files, or number of people connected, etc. But it doesn't bring really finally a lot of information regarding the return of investment of a solution. And something I just see with some couple of solutions today is finally how, in order to demonstrate this return of investment, is I can find a way to display this business intelligence inside the dam. As for example, I'm starting a project based on a workflow with a couple of milestones. So you have some deadlines attached to the milestones, because you need to approve this content between different stakeholders cross-wall. And so if you have some bottlenecks, I should be able to demonstrate that for that campaign, I've got some pain regarding this country in the second approval cycle. But if you are looking to have a solution, you don't have really this such solution. Okay, most of the time people they will use Power BI, trying to do some exports. So they are trying to build some complexity, something you can do, but it takes time and money, of course, but something that has to be also, I think, more embedded inside the DAM system, or also to provide a vision of the usage of a DAM. I see that as, for example, because I was working with a company, Content Square. It's a French one, but they are doing a lot of very great things alongside AI and alongside the customer journey and etc. Something I do not see really in DAM system. And so when we are back to after 1 year, so what is the role of the DAM system? It's true that sometimes it's a little bit of pain to explain that because we don't have really the tool sets really to demonstrate that. But by the way, something we can do is really, I will say, the feedback of the people, because most of the time, there was a time before, there was a time after. Before, most of the people, they were spending a lot of time just to reuse some assets. And at the end of the day, one of the core of the DAM system is all about the metadata, as Mark was saying. So, metadata is really this DNA of a DAM system that can provide some ROI regarding the usage of a DAM. Something I can say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to go on mute. I've got a boat outside that's very loud and a dog that's barking and a wife that's arguing with somebody. So my stress levels are going up. And that's the point. Being able to profile your users to the nth degree, as far as human resources will let you go, and the metadata that's encompassed in that, wrapped around your vocabularies, and the information side of the assets is a whole new world. So if you look at the investments that are going into master data, then DAM has a part to play within that, because these aren't just content, they are knowledge assets themselves. So there is a value there. The stress levels of users not being able to find, the ability to enhance that information with other information is a strategic return on investment. That's what the cost of the investment, this is why we're investing in this, because this is what it brings us. But if you're looking at the DAM to make you money, then you're looking at the wrong place, unless you think, okay, what we're doing now is we're embedding assets into content management systems, we're marking up these content management systems, and we're getting an increase of 30, 40, 50% in engagement. Now, the engagement value is a really interesting one. So how do you get that much uplift, and how can you improve it? So, you know, we're all used to the fact that Google now answers a question to us. You know, we ask a question and it gives us a verbal command. Well, that is a markup language. That is a semantic markup language. And, you know, if you really want to understand how that works and actually how easy it really is, then if you look at schema.org, it gives you a nomenclature. It's a global control vocabulary that's used by all the big search engines, all the big social sites, Facebook, Twitter. They all use this, because what it does is it codifies a global language. And if you mark up your websites with this global language, you're seeing massive increase, because it's just not human increase that's getting answers, it's the machines are able to deliver those answers. So I really recommend, I mean, it's a deep conversation and probably another webinar in and of itself at some stage. But again, you know, it's all these buzzwords, it's all this new stuff that we're going, I've got too much on my plate. Anyhow, I can't even understand metadata. How am I supposed to understand semantic metadata? Well, what you do is you get your CDO and the web team in, and you talk about semantic search engine optimization. You optimize your assets for this world of answering questions. And that, Jennifer, does get management buy-in. And it makes this whole, you know, oh, it's a flat file filing system that sits in folders. You know, Dan's moved way beyond that, which I think may answer and may get you some more money. There was a question here about, here we go. Where has it gone? Where's your question gone, CHI, about,
I answered to a couple of them, so you have to switch.
Oh, did you? Oh, right. Oh, okay, they've been answered.
Yeah, but you
Oh,
can
you
move. You can see in the tab answered, etc.
answered. So, okay, well done, Fred. You've been working behind. I'll have to pay more than you, I think. All right, there's some great answers here. I was looking specifically one about Box and Dropbox. Here we go.
Yeah, so from CI Hub, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Funny name, Sci-Hub. I know it's a company, not a person. For small organizations, what do you think is the right way to go? Shall we use a DAM that is easy and inexpensive? You have answered it. There's a disconnect between, you know, these file management systems. Most of them, and none of them pass the 10 core characteristics accredited test, mainly on the way they handle metadata or the lack of metadata, and version control, true version control. They produce derivatives, but they are a great way of sharing content quickly outside of email. So they have a place. A lot of DAM systems integrate with Box and Dropbox, and we've done quite a bit of detailed research on the difference there. If you are a small organization though, you know, how many pieces of content are you actually distributing out? And, you know, do you have rights roles around those things as well? There's a whole subset. So that's another 10 euros from you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Right.
But something maybe we can also say is that this you are talking about this further management. Okay, now today most DAM systems are metadata driven, but as we shared last week, it's I see more and more people, and especially to facilitate the onboarding, they're always okay, but I don't have folders. How I can manage my assets? Which is a good question, by the way. And finally, when you are back to what the DAM can do, they are providing collections. But what you can do if you had 1,000 collections, and most of the time, DAM vendors never thought about that. And so you have some lags into the system, or you cannot search for your assets. So it's true that today, if still people are using Dropbox, Box, WeTransfer, Drive, etc., it's just because it's simple, it's fast, it's easy to use. Even if I agree with you, try to search for an asset with IPTC inside Dropbox, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, you know, you want doubling core, and you want that sort of semantic markup part of it for the embed and what internal to, yeah, it all links together. Honestly, data centricity. And I will get to your answer at some stage, Jay. No, I'm not dodging the call. But our guest is here. She's on our couch. So the next question, Jennifer.
So again, this sort of reflecting what's happening at WWF, but also too, like, you know, I have colleagues kind of sitting in the same place as I and wondering, you know, will there ever be an opportunity to really work in a digital asset management team? Will there be such things as digital asset management directors leading teams, or will, you know, will we always kind of be tucked away in some other departments? So that's sort of part of the reason that I'm always wondering, you know, about that. And, you know, we're really lean at WWF, and frankly, I'm starting to kind of look at it differently, like, okay, we're going to have to be lean and kind of accept that. And so what does that look like? But again, would love to know what you're seeing out there. Are you seeing the teams growing? Is it still the Lone Ranger scenario? Again, I just want to have a sense of what's happening out there as well, you know, based on your experience.
Yeah, well, Fred, do you want to answer this question first?
Yeah, it was exactly the subject of my meeting with a French retailer just on Wednesday this week, and so they were asking me, so do I need really to get the team, the DAM department to manage that? And the boss was asking to one other girl, okay, DAM manager, you don't want to be a DAM manager? she said, yeah, I'm just a project manager, but I'm not technical. And at the end of the day, we have always this type of question, which is very important. But I do believe that we have to make a team of smart people. It's a mix between it doesn't belong as, for example, to the IT. It doesn't belong to their communication and marketing. It's something in between in order to really to gather all the content of the organization. You need to get some skills. You need to know how people are working. So I will say yes. Most of the time I try to advise to the customer. You need to get a team at that stage. I don't know if you have to say it's a damn team, because, and especially today in the enterprise ecosystem, we have DAM, PIM, CMS, etc. It's more digital at that stage. But yes, we need to get some good ambassadors. So, and finally, whatever the role, it can be product owner, DAM manager, but definitely we need a team with people who have they need to get experience regarding the jobs they are doing. And they need also to communicate, they need to improve, they need to make the DAM live at the end of the day, because sometimes we see projects without a team. So, and especially this is also something we tried, reason why I was saying at the beginning, to push a lot of efforts in the change, to create activity, to this all design thinking things approach, which is very important. And this is also the job of a team, so the DAM team in your case. So I think.
So I'm gonna throw a curveball here, and I would recommend the focus should be on the end-to-end content lifecycle, and that it should sit in the central intelligence department within any organization. And it should bring in subject matter expertise in all the areas that content touches. And the engine for that is definitely DAM. But what feeds the DAM, what is the oil that feeds this engine? It's the data side of it. Again, you know, got my hammer out once again, sorry, but it's the answer. And the DAM side of things, some of the most intelligent people I've ever met are in the DAM world, and they struggle to communicate what this thing is. And I get it, because it touches so many different areas. If you just look at requirements for a DAM system, when you've profiled your users right down to, you know, everything that they're going to need, the data model fixes that. It is a big team. But sadly, because it's a DAM department, it's a tiny team, unless you factor in, you know, organizations that are top down driving it, because they get it. They get the transformational nature of what DAM can do. They factor in all these other points of the KPIs and the ROI. They understand that the end product of the data analysis from an end-to-end content process is incredibly invaluable. But creating a new department in an organization is hard work. So it takes the brains in the organization, the subject matter experts, to come together and have their own DAM therapy sessions in order to create the buzz and the you know, the championship and the thought leaders to convey what it is that this whole thing means at the end of the day. So I think it should be a much bigger department. I think the librarians that sit in some of these DAM departments that are viewed as keyword taggers, you know, that's a waste. They should be curating experiences. And the way to do that is to look at content as an end-to-end process. You have ideators, they're creating ideas. Where do they get those ideas? What's the inspiration for their ideas? What's the stimulation that they get from looking at imagery? What does our brain do when we look at these images and it creates these ideas? How does that idea then go to a working group that can look at that idea? You know, this is workflow that is assigned to DAM, but doesn't necessarily have to be a damn system that's doing the workflow, because I do think that, you know, there is a failure there in a lot of cases where workflow and workflow complexity gives a different sort of experience of the dam. And again, it's another team. You know, workflow team isn't the damn team, so they have to work together. Okay, bring them in. Well, what are we trying to do with this specific workflow? What are we trying to analyze with this specific workflow as well? And where can that work elsewhere? I've kind of gone off tangent here, because the point I'm trying to make is, yeah, that's it, on librarians, you know, keyword taggers, curating experiences, the knowledge. They don't know everything, but they know where to find that knowledge. They know how to share that specific knowledge and that specific content in a curated world. And that in and of itself is transformational and segues back to, you know, return on investment, the management buy-in. And it's, you know, you have to go on a long journey. And the trouble is a lot of the time you're under pressure to put a system in place to solve one problem, which creates a multitude of problems at the other end without going right back to the hammer. I need therapy now.
Yeah.
Something we already also talking about at the beginning is I see more and more people, customers, they want to start a DAM project, but they have no resources at all. And so that's at one stage you can say, okay, do we have to start or not? Because it's, or sometimes I start with some people, they are just there for a couple of months, and after there is nobody. So who is taking care about the dam?
Oh, there's a great answer here from Fabrizio. You're knocking it out of the park, my friend, but you're going to have to pay for this one because you answered it. Why not position the DAM team like the supply chain organization in manufacturing? Absolutely. And that's what I mean by the end-to-end content.
Yeah.
It's a separate thing, actually, from anything. It's not in a marketing department. It's not in creative operations. They all come together under this idea to archive and everything in between. And that is the supply chain.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting perspective. And thank you, Fabrizio. Also a really interesting perspective. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's 10 euros, Fabrizio, to support wwf.org/WWF. Right. I believe we have another question. Jennifer.
This is just me wondering. I mean, I think now, I mean, this last year or two, I mean, maybe I'm just kind of taking my head out of the sand from working at the Panda, but like you're hearing so much about integration. Henry Stewart has done this whole content hub series. And yeah, I'm curious, we're definitely not there. Like, I think for us, probably the biggest benefit of integration with certain our platforms is rights management. But just wondering what you're seeing happening in other companies or organizations. Are people or are companies really integrating?
Yeah, I will say on my side, from what I see, and especially during the last 2 and 3 years, it's even more integrated inside the ecosystem, for sure. Of course, it's all about also the team and the consultancy, but as I said at the beginning, I'm not really for something that is doing everything in all-in-one. Most of the time, it doesn't really work. Or at that stage, I see that with a large customer, with some large system, just like Sitecore, Adobe, etc. But it's not free. You have to pay, and it's more or less. Sitecore is a good example because they made some integration with some different systems, just like StyleLab. At the beginning, it was a CMS, so they were able more or less to do a good piece of integration altogether. But it's true that today it's even more connecting inside the ecosystem, and especially I see a massive adoption today on the customer side from Salesforce. I would say it's something at the top. I have no idea what will be Salesforce in a couple of years. So it looks like they want to be a CMS they are trying to integrate some dam system. You get some surprises here, but at one stage, the commercial, the CRM is driving also a lot of projects that at one point you need to integrate inside your dam, because I see on my side with Michelin, everything is starting from Salesforce. They are starting a campaign for new tires, for example. And so all the information is in Salesforce, and they are driving and pushing the information, piece of this information inside the dam. In the meantime, the PIM, which is connected to the e-commerce platform, Amazon, etc., has also to get information from the dam, from Salesforce. So of course, the dam is really at the heart of the ecosystem for any retailer today. Otherwise, something you have to do, something we still see. Some customers, they have one dam for one usage, another dam for another usage, and at the end of the day, you have 4 and 5 dam system inside the organization. So is it the right path to take? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a good point, Fred. You do see multiple dams, and as consultants, we go in and say, well, you want one dam, one version of the truth, but that truth changes in certain circumstances. So I get my hammer out again, and I talk about data centricity. That there is a case, and we've got a case, in terms of the question about video and media asset management as opposed to digital asset management. Workflows, and they are workflows, have different sets of technical metadata, administrative metadata, and dams break when they're stretched too far, especially if it's a specific around a subject matter expertise, and it's compliance, and it's legal, and it's heavily regulated. Those all play into this. So taking this approach, Jay, I'm going to answer your question now about the data model itself. It sits independently. It could be a SQL database, a NoSQL database, as long as it retains the links and the relationships to the information, as long as it's codified in the standards that are needed for other applications. It's an add-on. It's more people coming in, expressing what their needs are, what the nomenclature needs to be, what kind of vocabularies they've got. Is that a global vocabulary? Is it a specific vocabulary? Does the dam push and pull that data? Well, in some cases it can. Some cases it doesn't need to. But when you want to then express that information in another part of the organization, you don't have to go into the dam, get an export or build an API. It's the same data. It's the master data. And there is a misconception about master data, and that will get sorted out over time, because we see really strange ways of approaching taxonomy with RDMS and reference materials and reference of truth, and the difference between how the different organizations call a country, for instance. They might, the ISO standard, for instance, for the United Kingdom, it's United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, right? And you'll go into any part of the organization and they will name the United Kingdom in so many different ways that you don't have a nomenclature. And that's the premise of master data. And master data needs to understand content, and it needs to understand the work that these people are building to do that. And then you distribute it out, and you find a way of distributing it out almost as if it's a spreadsheet, because people understand spreadsheets, right? But it's a database that acts like a spreadsheet, for instance, and it's easily shareable, and people can comment and they can augment, but you have a group of people that control that taxonomy. You have an authority around it. If there are requests for data to go into that, that shouldn't be made by the dam people and the dam vendor. That should be made by the people who understand that you need to get the nomenclature correct across an organization. And that is a big department, and it's a big job. But I'll tell you what, the more you focus on that at the beginning of any of this, the better the benefits are at the end. And again, you rinse and repeat and you clean. So hopefully that's answered your question. And that's another 10 from me and 10 from Fred.
Thanks, Frederick and Mark. Yeah, that's really interesting and somehow kind of comforting that data still is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you kind of you know, we've definitely had conversations with different stakeholders being like, we can just solve this data problem by getting a new dam. And, you know, and I think it's also really interesting too, because you are hearing from a lot of dam vendors about the APIs versus the importance of having standardized data to kind of speak to different systems in a fairly simple way that you're kind of explaining here, Mark.
Yeah, so country's a good one. You know, there is an ISO standard for country. So that's a standard. Why not use that in your data model? What's the objection?
Yeah.
There isn't an objection. Okay, so we've got one standard. But some things aren't standardized, like, you know, roles and functions. They're specific to an organization, but there are a lot of crossovers. So you can start building out that model, and you can start saying, okay, this is the nomenclature. And then you get to an area where you might have products and brands that are different in different countries. Well, that's synonyms, you know, that's synonym trees. Okay, oh, right. So that can be codified into this data model and then pushed to these other applications. And do you know what? It just makes so much sense. And yet, Fred and I, how long have we been in this industry? And it's all about putting the data model into the dam itself. Absolutely, the dam needs a data model. But look at these workflow tools. Look at the, you know, agency management that's codified to your control vocabularies is a huge win across the organization. And then another part of the organization comes in, well, we're doing this particular application and we're looking at this particular product. Is that something that the dam can do? No, it's something the data can do.
Something maybe we can also say to our audience is, because we are talking about metadata and the way finally to manage your taxonomies, facet, etc. Really take care also to some vendors, because today they change more or less their business model and they don't give you the tools to manage yourself. And so it's all about services. And so this is something I'm calling some hidden costs, because you are paying for something. And especially as soon as you want to add one metadata or to change a couple of things, you have to pay, which for me doesn't make sense really, because, and especially for retailers, as for example, I have no idea how many changes I have to provide to my data model. And so it's not really fair. And I tried really to advise people really, before selecting the dam, just check that on your side, without any extra cost, you can manage your own metadata.
Yeah, well, it's a big win for dam around the content side of it and the interaction with humans, right, and their pain points. And then, you know, the best buzz ever is when you have parts of the organization subscribing to your taxonomy because they get it.
Yeah,
that is, you know, to me, that's, you know, that makes the job worthwhile. But you have to go through a lot of pain and a lot of explaining, and, you know, we try and simplify this complexity, and we have to, because, you know, you need a bloody PhD to do this stuff sometimes. So yeah, it's
that's the reason why I started with a PhD 25 years ago.
That's right, went right for it.
Yeah, well, you know, I think the fact that I was expelled from school and never did any education has helped me understand this complexity from a visual. I'm a visual learner, or I'm a didactic learner, and, you know, I can see how it all comes together in the end. And, you know,
I'm not sure it's a good point for me.
What? I was expelled from school. Yeah, but the deputy headmaster, he was very rude to me in front of this girl I was trying to impress. I mean, I couldn't, anyway, let's divert it. Right.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. This has been really, really helpful. And I think the thing that I think it's actually been really clarifying in so many points. Again, like, we've been really leaning heavily on change management and trying to deal with adoption. And I think kind of going back to some brass tacks, like really relying on our data and respecting our data, is something that I'm definitely going to take away from this conversation. So I'm very grateful, and I'm really grateful to the audience for you know, participating, and for the donations as well. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Well, there's another donation coming here, because we have a question from Ala Majub. I'm sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly, but I am dyslexic. Would you shed the light on the role of augmented analytics, analytics that uses machine learning and artificial intelligence techniques to transform how analytics content is developed, consumed, and shared in a modern DAM system? Frederick.
Yeah, I do agree, and this is more or less what I tried to highlight just minutes before regarding this BI usage, as for example. So we can also talk about some augmented analytics, sorry. And I'm working with a company which is a Sisense. Maybe you know the guys, and this is really a straightforward their business today. And I do agree that we have at one point to provide such view of analytics inside your DAM system, and not say, okay, you can export, you can connect and see what you can do with Power BI, okay? Because it's even if you have I would say the good guys inside your company to make the connection, it's all about the way to manage the asset alongside the business. And but it's not something I can see really today outside of one or two vendors today. And so yeah, for sure, I would like to see more innovation at that stage, and that's also a good point also to measure the performance, the return on investment, etc.
Yeah, agreed. It took Google however many years for its AI to recognize that a cat is a cat, because a cat, cats go everywhere and they curl up in balls and they look like vegetables sometimes. And we've got to think about AI behind the firewall, which is, they don't have the data sets. They have to be trained. You have expertise that knows to look at something and describe those things behind the firewall. The firewall needs to be opened up to these AI tools, and there's all sorts of risks and ethics and things like that that come into play there. It's a long journey. There is a benefit between human machine learning and AI. Having a end-to-end process where you are starting not just at the data model, but the acquired and augmented data analytics, it's still part of this data first, whether it's humans or it's machines that are doing it. And I think we have not been stumped, Fred. Tags. Oh, yeah, we got another question here. Fabricio, you are costing us a fortune. What's he saying? Yeah, fortune, but it's worth it. 1 trillion trees. Could we use the users to improve the tags and metadata and captures and train AI? Absolutely. And companies approach that in various ways. But we've all got to avoid meta crap, and we've got to understand that people do use different terms for different things, so they need to sit in synonyms and be part of the search experience. And then that goes into, well, okay, what are the search engines behind these tools, and how effective are they with AI, and how do companies approach the sort of the visual side of it's pretty good. The knowledge side of it is a long way to go yet, but it definitely is augmented by the data models and the human experience and knowledge that goes into that.
Yeah, and something I would like also to see, because I give you some examples, or I see every day, but thanks to the AI, normally you should be able to recognize everything. This is the theory, not the therapy. And I see with ties, as for example, you have some information on the curve, but AI is not capable to recognize everything at that stage, okay? And that's one thing. And the other thing also is, I'd like from the DAM vendors to be smarter and to be able to get these keywords and to be able to map them alongside your taxonomy. In fact, it will make definitely the DAM system really smarter, and with some way to manage that instead of something I can see most of the time, and especially for my French customers, because you have some auto-tagging keywords in English, not translated, And so what I have to explain to the customer why it's in English. Okay. So a couple of things like that, really, where we can really improve the customer journey.
So, Jennifer, hopefully we've relieved your stress. Hopefully the audience have more idea that, you know, a damn therapy session is useful, it's relevant, it's timely, that our thinking around this thing we call content can change, it can shift, we can go deeper, we can bring in subject matter experts, we can try and convey to upper management, we can show the KPIs and the return on investment. And if we follow these steps, it really gives us the data we need to do it. And if we focus more on governance, and too many people say, oh, it's boring, it's governance. It's so critical to this data centricity world. I'd like to thank Jennifer for being so brave to come on the couch. We haven't met before. Your questions were fabulous, and thank you for joining us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure to donate the money to A Trillion Trees or any other aspects of what the WWF do, and it's pretty amazing. It's incredible. I didn't know, you know, to me it was pandas, but it's so much more than that. Thank you so much to the audience who engaged and gave us questions all the way through and challenged us. And I'm pleased, Fred, we didn't get one that we couldn't answer.
Yeah, because we have the experience.
Ah, there you go. Listen, everybody, have a great weekend. Adios. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
See you again.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.